Dr. Jordan Lill is a licensed and board-certified behavior analyst at the doctoral level and serves as a behavioral health manager at Pediatric Partners in Fargo, North Dakota. He specializes in the assessment and treatment of challenging behavior, caregiver education and support, and school-based behavioral consultation. Shelley Kenow is a certified special education teacher and has served as a special educator for more than 30 years. She's the author of Those Who Can't Teach, True Stories of Special Needs Families to Promote Acceptance, Inclusion, and Empathy, host of the YouTube series No Limits, co-host of Friday with Fran, a YouTube series focused on special education topics, and the owner of Shelley Kenow IEP Consulting. Barbara Munoz is a former high school varying exceptionalities teacher at West Orange High School in Winter Garden, Florida, and currently serves as a learning specialist and academic advisor at Beacon College in Leesburg, Florida, the nation's first accredited college or university dedicated to educating neurodivergent students with learning and attention issues. And we're going to start our conversation with Dr. Lill. What are some of the latest findings regarding the benefits of praising neurodivergent students, Doctor?
Thank you for having me on the show, Daryl. The latest research shows that when we deliver praise or attention to children, we want to do so in a very specific way. And what I mean by specific way is we want to label the praise, so letting the child know why you're providing the praise, and we see that when we deliver behavior specific praise or that label praise, we see an increase in the behavior that we want to see. So child being good, so that could be playing, sharing, following directions. And when we deliver that labeled praise, we also see a reduction in the challenging behavior and whatever that may be.
All right, thank you. So, Shelley, how does praise help children with learning and attention issues build self-esteem?
Like I emphasize also what Dr. Lill said. Thank you for having me today. We all want to know that we are valued, loved, and respected for who we are. And so when we're talking to our children, we want to be telling them exactly what it is about them that makes them the great person that they are. So we want to tell them, whether they're neurodivergent or not, very key specific terms. I like your effort. The effort that you put into this was really good, because a lot of times they're going to hear negatives from society, and they need to hear from us as parents and teachers all the wonderful things about them. I think the number now is 7 positives to 1 negative to negate that negative. And it seems like the science is always changing on that. I don't know if that's because we have such a negative society now, but it seems like we have to have more and more positives in order to get rid of those negatives. So if we as parents and teachers are feeding into those positives as much as possible, we're going to help our children feel better about themselves, away from what society might be telling them.
Well, thank you. So, Barbara, children obviously spend a lot of their time in the school setting. So how does praise help them succeed in school?
Praise is of utmost importance, Daryl. It's very important for our students to not only receive praise, but the appropriate type of praise. So there's 3 specific types of praise. There's the personal praise, which is like, great job, you're a good artist, you're a good singer. There's the effort-based praise, which is more student controlled and the effort that they're putting in. And then there's the behavior specific praise, which is what they are doing and how they can correct that behavior. So these 3 types of praise allow the student to be successful, but of course they have to be delivered in a successful manner so that the student understands and accepts it.
All right. So, Dr. Lill, are there any pervading misconceptions surrounding praise? And if there are, how can parents address that?
That's a great question, Daryl. So in my practice, the most common misconception is that the neurodivergent child, for example, if the child has autism, is diagnosed with autism, they may not value or pay attention to the praise or understand the praise. So I want to dispel that misconception in that every child wants that praise, and there's different types of attention or praise that the child may want. So you have to really be specific and understand the preferences of that child for the praise to be successful. And just because the child may not immediately react or you don't see change right away, persist and continue to provide that praise, because it does make a real difference when you're providing that attention for the behaviors you want to see.
All right. So, Shelley, are there challenges that parents face when it comes to applying praise in their child's life?
Oh, of course. As a child, I'm sorry, as a parent with a child, we often want to just say, as Dr. Munoz said, good job. Well, sometimes our students don't know what good job means. What did I do a good job with? Was it my effort? Was it the outcome? Was it the behavior? And so we have to be very aware of what we're saying and how we're saying it. And I think someone else mentioned that we have to be, you put in a lot of effort and you really stayed with that process until the end. Oh, you sat quietly in the car on the way to the store, and definitely think about those specific things that we are wanting to target. The more attention you pay to any behavior, the more of that behavior you're going to see. So if it is keeping their hands to themselves while you're driving from place to place, then that's the specific praise we have to do. We often forget, though, to praise, and we tend to only pay attention to, oh, you didn't do what I wanted, and so I'm going to tell you about that. So we need to always be sure that when we're seeing what they're doing is what we want them to do, that we're telling them specifically, do that more, by saying, that's really awesome that you kept your hands to yourself in the car ride, or whatever the behavior is, or whatever the activity is.
All right. Well, piggybacking off of what Shelley just said, Barbara, it seems that praise should be a natural reflex for parents, but apparently it is not. So can you amplify some of the additional mistakes that parents might make when it comes to praise?
Certainly. In my experience, the common mistake that parents are making is that sometimes they're giving too much of that personal praise, which is, great job, you're the best, you're such a good artist, you're so beautiful, so on and so on. When what we really want is more of an effort-based praise. Again, I love how you were able to do your homework focused for 15 minutes. So it has to be more intentional, that the student understands that there's room for growth and that they can continue to better. That the parent is happy, but because they are doing a behavior that is appropriate for them. So they should be able to grow on that as the student. But that's one of the mistakes that I've seen. Another one is this comparison that parents often like to make to their siblings. So they might, instead of the compliment being very original, I love how you've been able to read this book for 10 minutes sitting down, it becomes like, your sister can read this book. I like that you're doing it, but maybe we can read 15 minutes more like your sister did. So I find that comparison to siblings is something that can get in the way. And also the over complimenting things that really might not need a compliment at that moment or a praise at that moment.
All right. Well, thank you. So, Dr. Lill, can you talk to us about how parents can creatively integrate praise into their daily routine with their children?
That's another great question. So, of course, as the panel has discussed, we want to use labeled praise and really describe why we're providing that attention for the child. And we want to catch our kids being good, so to speak. So, what I tell parents all the time, set aside 10 to 15 minutes and work on those pride skills. And pride would be, praised by reflecting and expanding on what your child is saying. You want to imitate what they're doing. So if they're playing a game or they're building blocks or whatever the child's doing, try your best to also mirror or imitate that. Then we want to just always describe what they're doing, right? And we want to deliver this with enthusiasm that's matched with, what the child prefers. So I talk to families about challenging yourself to deliver at least 15 praise statements in that 10 minutes, and then the next time beat it. And what we find is that the parent will do this across the day over time, because practice builds that skill. And once the family is doing that, like I said with the research before, is that we're going to see an increase in the behavior specific or labeled praise that the parent is giving. And when we're doing that, typically we find that challenging behavior goes down, and the other behaviors that we want to see that we have been praising, we see an increase. And families find that some of the families I work with find that fun and challenge each other. And certainly the kids really enjoy that 10, 15 minutes, because it's all about them and catching them being good.
All right. So, Shelley, does the approach to praising evolve as the child gets older? I mean, do we use the same approach with toddlers that we do with preteens, that we do with high schoolers? Talk to me about how the approach should modulate as the child grows older.
Yeah, excellent question. And absolutely, it changes because the understanding of the person that you're speaking to changes. And you want to make sure that you're modeling the behavior or the words that are understandable. So when you're talking to your preschooler, you're not going to have maybe a 10 or 12 word sentence. You're probably going to do your best to keep it down to two or three words, pardon me. Just say, excellent focus, great job holding your hands together. But then as you get to the teenager or the preteen, you're going to be talking about different behaviors that they're doing, because they're likely going to be different than what your toddler was doing. And so you want to focus specifically on those kinds of behaviors and make sure, especially when we get to our preteens and our teenagers, that we are really valuing them for who they are and letting them know that, and this actually goes across all ages, that we still love the person. We don't love the behavior though. And that's okay. The person is not the behavior. And we want to make sure that our teenagers especially know that, and that we make sure to let them know, I heard what you said, or I saw what you did. And while that is appropriate, I would like it to be this. Whatever, if it's cleaning their rooms, for example, you did a fabulous job. It's your room. I'm going to just ignore that it's not exactly to my standard. You don't necessarily say that, but you're thinking that before you go in and praise them because, hey, you cleaned your room and I didn't have to tell you about it. So you want to be thinking about the age and how what they need is going to be a little different depending on their age. And again, be very honest and be very specific with the praise, no matter what the age is, but absolutely make what you're saying at a level that the person understands and really believes what you're saying.
So, Barbara, let me ask you this then. What does the approach of praise look like for high school students and for collegians who I presume still require praise to help bolster their self-esteem?
Sure. The approach looks so different. High school students and college students, just like other students, but specifically these students are really looking for connection. For me, specifically in high school, this is their last effort to really be able to experience some sort of success and receive a high school diploma to be able to go on to college. So it is so important that that's our last chance, I feel, and having been in a high school and worked with students at that capacity, we really need to identify what leadership skills that student has and other strengths and character traits that we can impress upon. So it's just really about, they just come with, I've just seen some high school students that are just really down and out, and they've done some things that are they've been arrested, they've been in jail, they've done some things that have not been appropriate, and they really are so in need of praise that is just so purposeful and really touches them. So I'll give you a great example. If you can identify, when I see students, or what I look at students, whether it be high school or college, I always try to identify what are these character traits that are really showing. And the one that I'll give you an example for is leadership skills. So when you can identify that leadership skill and be meaningful and tell the student, I really see leadership, you have a great ability for leadership. You really have leadership skills. I love how you're helping your classmates. You're also offering praise for your classmates. That is a wonderful character trait that students can really grow upon and gives them just hope. So for me, praise is a lot about giving students that hope. And I live by a quote that's from Mark Twain that says, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. And that quote really reminds us that genuine praise, compliments, and affirmations move and inspire us. So it is very important that we continue that model, but done correctly.
All right. So, Dr. Lil, let's say that parents who are watching this program take all the great advice that you three have distilled. How can they assess whether their praise strategy is working, particularly if they're not seeing an immediate shift in their child's behavior?
Yeah, I get this question quite a bit from families. How am I going to see change? How am I going to notice change? And as a behavior analyst, surprise, I'm going to say collect some data, and that data can be anything. You can get a calendar out and tally how many times that you saw the challenging behavior that you want to change. You can take data on how many praise statements you use in that, if you're playing that 10-15 minute praise game that I described earlier, and just take a look at the past, right? Look at the present and see the difference. I also encourage families to listen to others, listen to teachers, neighbors, other family members, the change that others see in their child once they use this strategy and increase the rate of praise they provide their child. And sometimes change is slow because kids are learning for neurodivergent kids can be a little different compared to the neurotypical child. And even then, everybody learns differently at different paces. So I've always been told by my mentors to persist and not to punt, meaning we want to give it time. We want to keep the effort going and not throw away a plan that could work over time and has been shown in the research to be effective for most kids. So you have to be patient with change. Change is learning, and families really have to persist and not punt on this.
All right. So, Shelley, I wanted to circle back and kind of put a finer point on this. How can parents ensure that the praise they are delivering is genuine and specific?
Thank you. Yeah, you definitely want to be looking at, again, what it is that you're looking for. I label behaviors as wanted and unwanted. And the reason I do that is because each family dynamic is different from the neighboring family. And so your wanted behaviors might be unwanted next door. And when you're thinking about how to praise your child, you want to be thinking about that specific behavior or action that you are wanting more of. If it is, say, example, being respectful, first of all, you need to have really taught them and modeled for them what respect in your household looks like. It doesn't look the same from culture to culture. So you need to make sure that you are explaining what your definition of respect is. And then as your child does those things that you have laid out for them and you have modeled for them, you have to be very intentional, as Dr. Munoz said earlier, about thinking of what am I going to say? How am I going to say this? And sort of prep yourself ahead of time. As you're teaching the skill, make sure that you're saying to yourself, okay, when I see them smile at someone or put their hand out, if these are the things that you teach them to be as respectful items, that you then catch them doing that and you say, that was an awesome way to reach your hand out. That was being very respectful. And it really is a lot of introversion of looking at what am I seeing and what do I want more of. And I have to make sure that I'm catching it as often as possible. Your child is going to know if you're not genuine with what you're saying. And it's better to be maybe even overly specific than more general, because if you just say, good job, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know what I did that was good. Was it, you know, because I held my hands at my sides? Or was it that I reached my hand out and shook the person's hand when I was introduced to them? Which behavior is it that I'm being told good job? I don't know. So, really being thoughtful and intentional about what it is that you're looking for in those behaviors that you want, catching the child doing those things, and then speaking to the child about them very sincerely.
All right. So, Barbara, you get our last question. You're working in the college environment, so you're seeing kids at the far end of that education spectrum. So maybe you can answer for us, what are the long-term effects of a praise strategy like we've discussed?
Certainly, Daryl. It'll raise self-esteem. It makes them feel more confident. It allows them to feel like they're active participants. And sometimes in college, especially in colleges that are specifically for students with learning disability, that of being an active participant as opposed to just almost being on this ride of college is very important. Ultimately, it allows them to persist and persevere, which are the 3 P's: passion, persistence, perseverance. And the good thing is that while you're working on all these things, you're really hitting all the executive functioning skills that they might be weak at, or they might have a weakness at. So if their weakness might be task initiation, and you praise them for being able to get started on an assignment, that ultimately will benefit them. And if you can hit on their executive functioning skills that are weaker, all of this, it's just all good. It will just help them become better human beings and be able to function better in society and to their potential.
All right, we'll have to leave our conversation right there. And in the spirit of our conversation, good job, all three of you. Thank you very much. Dr. Jordan Lill, Shelley Kenow, and Barbara Munoz. Thank you for the knowledge.